Hello, everybody. I want you to get super excited for this week's episode. We're interviewing Jelsy, a health and wellness coach. She specializes in helping her clients to enhance their lives by helping collaborate with them to adopt a healthy lifestyle and creating a lasting relationship with themselves built upon unconditional self love. She has a really powerful story, and inside this interview, you are going to learn exactly how you can start tapping into this too. So, let's dive right in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another episode. The first interview in a while. We have Jelsy Martinez here from Sons and Self Coaching. Thank you so much, Jelsy, for joining us this afternoon. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, doing pretty well. And thank you for having me. Also, this is our first time having a full in-depth conversation. So I'm excited to get to know you a little better too.
I know. We were introduced through a mutual friend, and it's just so excited to be able to hop on here with you and do this kind of I don't know, I'm really enjoying your energy and who you are so far and feeling really grateful for that in this space right now. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about where you come? I know that you are a health and wellness coach and you teach people how to love themselves. And what does that really mean from your past? Can you tell us a little bit more about where you came from?
Yeah. So basically my story of,
Yeah.
how I got started in this. So it goes way back. I struggled a lot with depression and anxiety when I was in, I'd say, even now that I look back at it, like middle school, high school, even beginning college for the first time. Um, Especially in high school, I experienced something traumatic my sophomore year that kind of escalated that depression and allowed me in a way to just sink deeper into it. And at the time in my life, I just didn't know a lot about therapy. The only counselor I really knew was a high school counselor who isn't um, I didn't even think that was anything similar to therapy. I thought it was just to help you with career and and school stuff. Um, but yeah, so I struggled with depression a lot in high school, and I seriously thought, and when I was in high school, that I was going to die before the age of 21.
Oh my
I
gosh.
went through my junior and senior year, just having these weird feelings of all right, I don't have much longer, so I don't know what the point is. My depression was getting really bad, but it wasn't I didn't know how to tell anyone about it. I didn't know how to ask for help. And on the outside, as you've seen in my personality, I'm very bubbly and open, and talkative, and so it was really easy for me to mask my depression throughout high school and even outside of high school.
Wow.
um, yeah, it was really tough. And then I graduated high school, and I started out at the University of Texas at Austin, and I was a communications major. And already I just felt like I wasn't in the right place at the right time, mostly because I was depressed. And also, as I was learning more about communications and how to speak to people, I realized I have nothing to speak about. So I went back to this, what's the point? And it was a really, really hard time for me. And then I was in a relationship at the time that didn't end too well. It wasn't really the healthiest. Um, and I started having suicidal ideations at one point and self harming. And then after, I think it was 2017, I tried to take my own life.
Wow.
And I'm more comfortable talking about it right now just because I just made a video about this where
Oh
I
wow,
expressed it.
yeah.
And so, yeah, making that video was really difficult for me. And so now I feel like I've released it more now that I've opened up about my story. Especially in front of my audience and people that I
Yeah.
am working to connect with. Yeah, so that was not successful, or well, you don't use that term. It I'm still here basically is what
You're
I'm
still with
trying to
us. Yeah.
say. Yes, exactly. I'm still here. And so that death is, I don't know, I thought that's what I needed at the time. And in a way,
Mm.
like it kind of was what I needed, but not in the way that I was trying to receive it. So I thought that I was supposed to be dying physically and getting rid of everything, like just making everything disappear, because I thought I was worthless and had like no value in the world. But in reality, I needed a death that was a little like that was more like deeper than that, like deeper than just cutting everything off. Something more of like emotional, and I needed help, and I needed to like shed that past like depressed self and move into something else. And so after my suicide attempt, I did a lot of healing. I ended up moving in with my mom, one because I had to be watched.
Sure.
Yes, that happened.
You're talking to an old behavioral health nurse. I used to do that.
Okay,
I used to like
really?
watch people in the hospital and like make sure they were all good and like,
Those are
talk with the people. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the best people. Like when I like was in the hospital, I like didn't even want to like talk, like I didn't want to confront my family because I
Sure.
didn't want them to, feel bad about the situation. I didn't want them to think it was them or their fault.
Mm.
I wanted them to like, I don't know, I just wanted them to just not know that it ever happened. But of
Sure.
course, they found out because they're the first people that you call.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, the nurses and doctors and counselors and everyone else that was there, like they were the people that I wanted to talk to and get support from. And even after I tried, like I was disappointed that I woke up the next
Mm.
morning.
Oh
And
wow.
so I was still incredibly depressed. It wasn't this like I tried and then like I felt immediately better and like a new person and like, oh, I remember why I wanted to live. I didn't actually have that after. I like still was so depressed and like upset that it like didn't go through. Um, and yeah, I just had this feeling of like worthlessness, and like I just didn't think that things were going to get better. I felt like I was just stuck in whatever this was. I thought it was just my life. Like that's just what it was going to be for the rest of my life. And so I don't know really what it was that triggered it. I like moved in with my mom, and I did have like supportive friends, and I guess like more people popped into my life more often to check in. And so my mom also got me set up with like therapy, which was really helpful. And yeah, so after I started like getting to the point where I was feeling just a little bit better, like more motivated, I started working out. I used to run a lot in high school, and I used to love my anatomy class and my biology class in high school. And so I had always liked the idea of health, but had never done it myself, just because it wasn't it wasn't very big in my family to talk about it. Yeah, so I just found that as being my chance of having something to focus on other than me. I'm like, I don't want to think about me or my
Yeah.
problems. I don't want to think about the fact that I don't love myself. I'm just going to like try to focus on health or like becoming healthier. And so I started running again. I started trying to eat a little better. I tried it I went through this like wild phase where I just like did everything because I wasn't afraid of death. And so like I would just like go meet random strangers or like go party
Mm.
or like say things to people that I would have never ever said before. I was just a lot braver with my life. And then it all kind of compiled to this one moment that I talked to, and I come back to this moment a lot. But I had just finished a run, and I was like sitting in my mom's boyfriend at the time had like a house that was on a piece of land. So I was sitting in this field, like on my yoga mat, and I like was basking in the sun and really like I just felt good. Like I felt okay. And that moment of just like, holy shit, like I actually feel okay. Like this is the weirdest like feeling. It's been so long since I've felt this. Like I just felt genuinely okay. And I had like this realization that like, okay, if I'm feeling this now, like I can keep this feeling, or I can keep feeling this. I can feel it again, like and again and
Wow.
again. And so I had this weird like epiphany, and I was like, I need to share this. I was like, I need to tell the whole world how good it feels. And so like I ran inside, and I like went straight to my computer and I was like, I'm going to go back to college and I need to figure out what degree is going to help me share this with other people. And
Wow.
so I started looking through degree programs and I found one that had like a picture of like a group of people and they were all like celebrating something and they were all like in their like sports gear and stuff and they were like high-fiving and super excited. And it was health sciences and in parentheses healthy lifestyle coaching. And I was like, dude, I could do that. I was
That's
like, that was
awesome.
awesome. And so I started reading more into it, and decided to enroll back in school. And like I started feeling like I had some sort of purpose or some
Oh
sort of
yeah.
like a reason to be alive again. And it was just a really great feeling. And I don't know, like I guess just like studying health, because in college we learn a lot about like self-love and motivation and like behavioral science and like moving yourself towards the version of yourself that you want to be. We learn about like nutrition and exercise, and even wellness. There was one class that I took that was just about leisure and quality of life. And so I learned so much through all of that that eventually like I started developing a self-love and I started to get to know myself better and doing more research around that. And it was just like a weird switch that like when I started loving myself, my whole life just changed drastically. Like my relationships were better. I like had better friendships and like I enjoyed my job more. It was just a crazy shift. And so I didn't do that degree really to be a health coach at first. It wasn't until my like junior year of college that I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to be a health coach. And I'm going to do it not differently per se, because I feel like anytime you work with a health coach, you do learn how to love yourself more. But I was going to do it
Yeah.
through a lens of self-love. So like everything that I do, every person that I coach is going to be like with so much love and like in a way that I hopefully can model for them the way that they can treat themselves. A loving, a loving, more compassionate way, because I want them to have that moment where they're sitting in the middle of Texas for some crazy reason, or just like having their own moment where they're just like, I'm fine. Like
Yeah.
whatever life throws at me, I'm gonna be okay. So yes, that's my story and where I'm coming from and why I do what I do and why I'm working my ass off to do it.
Oh my goodness. I love how you shared how you went from the bottom, like, we can consider like a suicide attempt, maybe rock bottom. Like, I think that a lot of people would agree with that. And you just illustrated the journey and I think spoke to a lot of our listeners. I know between, my podcast, and I'm sure a lot of your own audience has heard this story as well, but a lot of people feel that low and they kind of exist there, and a lot of us don't know how to even get up the next like rung of the ladder. And so it was just really beautiful to hear you explain how, it didn't get easier right away. It was actually pretty sucky until like I started taking a little step here and there to like, maybe I'll just start moving my body a little bit more. Maybe I'll start, trying to eat a little bit healthy. And then like, wow, then you had that beautiful moment of I felt okay. And that was like really good, and it pretty much changed your life. It sounds like, would you consider that like your breakthrough moment where you felt like things are starting to make more sense for me?
Oh my gosh, yes. That was definitely the moment. Things were pretty chaotic before then. And then at that moment, things just started to flow and align. And yeah, that was the moment.
What a valuable experience. I can just hold that like close and dear to my heart because not like a day or a moment, but like a series of like weeks in a row where I just kind of like had a similar realization in my own life with my eating disorder. And the reason why this podcast and my business exists, because I had that same moment just in my own version where I was like, I have to tell everybody. Like it
Exactly.
literally has to be told because so many people, like including like you think about how far you've come and how damaging and how low you feel throughout your everyday life, like even to the point of wanting to end your life, and how there is a way to move forward and there, it can be taught. And like wanting to do that, that's such a beautiful thing. I'm really grateful for your moment that you had in the field, and that is such a special thing that you shared with us just now. But I was just wanting to talk to you a little bit about before your high school journey. How was life at home? What was it like growing up with your family? And what do you think kind of shaped your life coming into that season where you just felt so depressed?
Yeah. Well, for one, it runs in my family, so it's genetic. And I didn't realize that until after I was diagnosed with depression. My mom was like, "Oh yeah, we all have it." I was like,
Oh
"Oh, thanks,
my
mom."
God.
Yeah, and I guess I should have known just by signs and like seasons of my own mom's life, but I wasn't aware of it. I kind of had the rose colored glasses, and I had moments where like I would feel really down, but then I would say, "Oh, it's just going to go away. It's going to go away." And sometimes it just didn't go away. Um and so yeah, that was one thing, that it is genetic in my family. It has been passed down. And then um I know another like factor is my parents got a divorce my like in the middle of middle school. So like my going into my 8th grade year, I started at a completely new school. And so that was a little jolting, like having a completely new life in a new city. um Other than that, I mostly, something that I always come back to is like one experience that I had my sophomore year, which I haven't like publicly talked about at all. And at like that experience definitely shelled me, or like put me into like a shell where I just didn't want to like let anyone in. And so that definitely escalated things, I would say, just because I didn't have like support after that. And then I also just, that's really when I realized that my, like everything that I was telling myself about myself, like being like worthless and like unlovable and all of that jazz, like it in a way confirmed it in my mind. Like the story that I told myself is that occurrence happening just like confirmed that all of the things, all of the mean things I've been saying about myself were true. And so it kind
Mm.
of trickled from there. So there was a number of factors. And I'm sure if you went down to the science of it, I was not eating healthy. I was running and doing cross country, but I was not a like eating the best, I would say. Um and I'm sure there's other factors, maybe not getting enough vitamins, or I don't know.
That being said, what's your opinion and thoughts on, how we treat our bodies in terms of like movement and nutrition and those types of things, and how they somehow come over to translate to self-love? I want to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, that's really exciting for me, because something like a breakthrough that I had with like helping clients over like with self-love, especially because like most people like will come to me saying like, "Oh, I want to lose weight," or "I want to start exercising more." But then when you unmask it even more, it comes to like their self-perception or self-love. So now I just directly advertise it as self-love, because that's, you're getting two birds with one stone. But in reality, they do go hand in hand. So now the way I run my programs is, before we even start talking about self love, um, first we work on your physical health. So taking care of your diet and your exercise, and even sleep is something helpful as well. So before we get into like more details in regard to like self-love or your mindset, or even like taking action on something that you've been putting off for a long time, or like finding purpose in your life, we take care of your body first. So whatever it is that the client feels most drawn to at that moment. When we start working together, we work on that. And then we slowly integrate the rest after that, because it's so important to have your body be healthy first.
Yeah.
Like, you have more energy, it builds resiliency, it builds confidence, and you also get those small wins at the beginning that help you show yourself that, like, okay, I made a promise to myself and I did it. So you're building trust with yourself as well. So it's
Right.
incredibly important. And then that's also, if you think back to my journey too, is I started with health. I was like, I'm not focusing on anything else. Just going to try doing this health thing and then see where it takes me.
Yeah, I love that you just illustrated how you start that first. And once you start to, nourish your cells and everything and start to show yourself those small wins, that can help translate into like your further success. I take a similar approach. And so I totally love that you do that too. And I think a lot of people, it's not the first thing they think of. Interestingly enough, I don't think we're even trained that way. Like growing up, like we're taught to take a pill, we're taught to, do anything but, look at the look at the quality of food and like our sleep and things like that. And our society is not as constructive towards, making those changes. But I think that that's what probably makes you and I so excited to, go and work with people, because it feels like we're sharing like a secret that's just like, you should have this, like you deserve this.
Yeah.
And like you definitely will love your life more by starting this way, and it will be more permanent as well. So that is so exciting to hear.
Yes, I can also tell that you've been, I'm not sure if this is natural or something that you've learned as like you've been studying to become a coach, but you're very good at listening and reflecting and summarizing, like bringing back like what I'm saying. So I appreciate that. Thank you for listening so well.
Totally.
As coaches, we mirror our clients as well, and so sometimes it's nice to be able to, like, when we do summarize what the client had just said, and especially if we do like a reflection that's even deeper, where we pull something from what they've maybe said in previous sessions. It's
Mm-hmm.
just such a beautiful moment to have yourself mirrored to you, in the coach's words, because then you can see yourself from a different perspective.
Yeah. And that makes me want to ask you, how has like stepping into coaching and like helping other people, has that brought up anything for you in terms of like discomfort, or like, oh, I have more work to do in this area. Have you had any revelations about your own self?
Um, well, just like anything that you start, it's always rocky. I was very fortunate that since like studied in college, and I'm sure like with your course, you do practice coaching other people. So even like we had one class that was, well, it was a couple, there was a couple pieces to this class, but one part was we would have a coaching session. So we would coach one of our peers with like the professor and the TA watching, and then also 40 other students. And
Oh,
so we'd have to coach in front of everyone, and then we'd sit there and listen to their feedback. So if anyone noticed anything, they would like raise their hand and give you feedback. And so that was a very interesting experience, in that like it is, you makes you very like feel very vulnerable, and it is very uncomfortable to like practice coaching skills. And I think that's something that, just based on a video I was just watching recently, is not taken into consideration. Like with some people, when they think about coaches, they don't think about like all the work that coaches did to become like who they are right now and to have the skills
yeah.
that they have right now. They think like, oh, they just get on the call and they just start talking and, just help people solve their problems.
Sure.
And it's so much more than that.
It
It really
is.
is. It's not just getting on the phone call. One, it's holding space for other people. That's
Oh
something
yeah.
I had to learn how to do, is hold that space, an unconditional positive regard. And I think the biggest thing that was different to me was like putting the client in the driver's seat, because often we want to just give advice and tell people like, if they're sad, we want to make it better. Or if they're like
Mm,
mad, we want to make them less mad. We want to just get them back to happy again as fast as we can. And we'll say anything to make that happen. Like, it's fine. Or like, oh, your problems aren't as bad as other people's, like you're going to
mm,
be fine. And so in that case, like we're taking the driver's seat, we're trying to play their instrument in a way. But they have to play their own instrument, and we have to just encourage them and hold a positive regard, and show them that they have autonomy in their life and they're the expert in their own life. We're just supporting them and getting like pulling it out of them, that the magic that they need is already within them.
totally. Yeah, my schooling teaches the same thing, like learning how to ask those questions to get people to think in ways that maybe they hadn't thought of, because they have maybe like, maybe they just haven't even thought of to think that way, or maybe they don't want to because nobody's asked, or sometimes people are afraid to ask their friends and family questions. I had a feedback from my one of my own best friends recently. She was like, I don't know if you want me to ask that. I don't want to overwhelm you. So I feel like the nice thing about being like a coach and being there for your client is your ability to have that, to hold that like neutral, that unconditional, like positive, like regard, like you were saying, and be able to just like be there and like not be afraid to ask the hard questions. That's something
Exactly.
that, yeah, that's something that like I feel like I'd love to hear your perspective on.
Yeah, no, I would love to tell it because it is
Yeah.
something that like I just mentioned before, it was one of the eye awakening or eye opening, the eye opening, mind awakening
You just
thing.
invented your own phrase.
Yes, there we go. Eye awakening.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was one of those things that I struggled with a lot because I always like, I feel like I did coach my friends and family and would help them through things, but I would do it by, all right, we're going to sit down, we're going to make a list. I'm going to tell you all the things you need to do to like be happy, and then you're going to take it and you're going to go do it. But in reality, like, that's not the way to get people to change in a way that's lasting. And
Totally.
so if I have a client that comes to me, and you'd have to give me like a good example. I guess I could use the smoking.
Yeah.
We're working on something completely different, but I also know that they're smoking on the side, or they like are, yeah, they're smoking. Um, One thing is everyone is in like a different stage of change. I'm not sure if you've talked about that in your course or not, but the trans theoretical model for change.
Yeah.
So the very first stage of change is pre-contemplation. So this person that I'm coaching, like hypothetically, we're talking about working out, but then I know that they're smoking on the side. So they're in this zone of pre-contemplation where they are, um, they don't want to make a change, and they also haven't thought about making a change. And so not I can't start working with them really. I could give them, like, I could put on my expert hat for a moment and like ask them about like their experience with smoking, but personally it wouldn't be something that I bring up unless the client mentions it. And most likely it will become mentioned, in that like if they're working on a goal of exercising, they might mention like, oh yeah, but like, like maybe jokingly, if I stop smoking so much, I'd, have the breath for this. And so that's when I would pull in and ask, like, is that something you're ready to work on right now? Is that something you're ready to even just talk about? So moving them from that pre-contemplation of I'm not even thinking about it and I don't want to think about it, to contemplation where they like we have that conversation. I'm like, would you be open to me giving you some like not advice, but like some information on smoking and like the effects that it has on your health.
Totally.
And then in that phase, that gets them thinking like, okay, maybe it is something that I should think about. And then from that, once they're ready, in a position where they're ready, they move into, I believe it's planning. So then that's when we would start like setting a goal around it and talking about it more. But until like, if they're in the, like, if they don't bring it up to me, I won't call them out on it unless it's something that they are like, if they mention it, like, oh yeah, I'm trying to exercise, but like I smoke too much. If they mention it, then I'll reel that in and I will say like, well, you're completely right about that. You're totally right about that. If you smoke less, you would have an easier time breathing during exercise. And then ask for their permission. Like, do you want to expand on that? Like, let's talk about that for a moment if you're ready. If they're not ready, I don't even go there.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unless they're
And
open to a conversation.
yeah, I love how you tied that into, what we said in the last, few minutes, how, we're not here to give expert advice, and you can put on that expert hat in a moment if you need to help educate them, but it's best if you don't bring up like something out of context if it's not related to the goal that they're trying to achieve, because if that person's not ready to walk away from that thing that maybe is not their best option, or it's not going to be best for them down the road, it still has to come from inside of their heart. They have to have a motivating like reason to change, and they have to be seeing it as like life is going to be better after this. And I just realized that that's often like a piece when it comes to eating disorders too. Like, the people that listen to this podcast, they're women with eating disorders, and we all have our, we want to get better, but then there's that why, and like, why will my life be better? And it gets confusing until we can get really clear on that. And then the eating disorder gets in the way of something that we really want. Like for me, I wanted to grow business, and I knew it was going to prevent me from being a successful entrepreneur. And even though I don't have that business anymore, it guided me and it like put me down this path. So I guess now's the perfect time to kind of ask you, like, what's your best piece of advice for our listeners today as they're looking for their breakthrough? What would you tell them as they're looking for that thing that might help them make the next step?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, and I actually got asked a similar question in another podcast that I was on. And the advice that I gave on that podcast was get a therapist, because that's like the number one thing that helps with everything. But in reality, like even before that, because some people just aren't ready for therapy yet, before
Mm,
that, my like biggest piece of advice is that like you are capable of change. Change is going to happen regardless of what decision you make, whether you decide to change towards the life you want to live or decide to stay the same. But in that way, you're changing as well, because you're changing, just getting deeper and deeper into this cycle that you're already in. So, regardless, you're changing.
oh yeah.
But you are capable of change. So you're never ever stuck in one space, even when it feels like it, even when it feels like there's no way out. There's always a way out. That would be my tip of advice, or my advice tip.
Yeah. Well, everybody, I think I completely agree with what you just said. There's always a way out. There's always a way that we haven't thought of our situation in terms of what is available to us. And not everybody is at the place where they're ready to take on it's almost like a responsibility sometimes to take on a therapist, or even take the accountability and the responsibility to start working with a coach, because sometimes you just don't feel like you're mentally in that place where sometimes our things that we have, our eating disorders, they become a thing that are our best friends, that they're not good best friends, but we don't want to get rid of them. And so I think that's beautiful how you framed that. And everybody, that is all for today. Jelsy, I'll keep you on just after this episode, but everybody, thank you so much, and cannot wait to talk with you next week. Anyway, I know that you loved watching this episode as much as I had fun recording it. I loved chatting with Jelsy because I could really resonate with a lot of the things that she went through on a very deep level. While I never tried to take my own life, I can really appreciate the journey that she went through, taking that time to discover what it means to take care of yourself. And the biggest highlight of today was that you take care of your physical body, and you'll notice transformations in your mind. So I love talking about this. That's one of my main things I love to chat about with my own clients. And if you like this show, make sure to leave the show a review on iTunes, or if you're watching from YouTube, like and subscribe, share the video, share the interview, let everybody else know that you found an amazing episode and a show that you like. and share it with somebody that maybe really needs this message today. Also, don't forget to check out the Breakthrough mini course to help you find a sustainable way into your recovery process. I know that a lot of times we get kind of stuck in the routine of things, so I created this course for you to be able to take that routine, just take yourself out of the status quo and be able to start thinking about your recovery in a new way. And I know this is going to help you. Everyone who's gone through the course has done such powerful breakthroughs on day one. So make sure to go get that, and the link for that is in the show notes.